Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is Steve Waddell. And Steve spent 25 years building nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, greatest ships in the world, and I would have to agree. And then 11 years growing his wife's company, Reed Integration Incorporated, into a multi-million-dollar consulting and training business. Then he started his own company, Nasoni, which actually led to him writing his book, Valuepreneurs, which is where we pick him up. So Steve, we're going to go into some of the details of all of that, but let's you have all of this experience as an entrepreneur. Then you had your experience with Nasoni. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we can talk about how that led into writing Valuepreneurs. And by the way, just so you know, Valuepreneurs, the subtitle is The New Rules for Building Products, Growing Your Business, and Achieving Your Entrepreneurial Dream. And it has won 23 awards in just a little over a year. Starting in January 2024 when it was published. And it's now the most awarded entrepreneurial book that has been written. So congratulations, Steve, and welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it, John. It's great to be here, number one. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to do this. But, you asked me about the background, right? So, you probably, like myself, get inspired watching shows like Shark Tank, right? And I know probably 10 years ago, I got inspired just by watching other entrepreneurs. And I have that kind of mentality that if something isn't working right, it could be done better, right? And I get ideas all the time, but I never really executed on them. I was perhaps a entrepreneur at the time.
Yeah.
Right? And so one day, I've always hated rinsing after brushing my teeth. It's a simple nagging problem, right? So I'll ask you, John, how do you rinse after you brush? Do you cup your hand, tilt your head, or use a cup, right? How do you do it?
It's a good question. I typically rinse after brushing with mouthwash, but
Okay.
I think that I'm not supposed to do that. I think you're not supposed to do those things so close together. So I just lean over and stick my face into the faucet awkwardly.
So I did that, craned my neck, right? I didn't want to use my hand because typically your hands might be dirty. And the cup is exposed to the aerosol effect from the toilet, which are bioaerosols that get ejected when you flush the toilet, including E. coli, staphylococcus, things like that. And so I always crane my neck and, for all my life. And I'm like, how come nobody's ever fixed this? And so, one day my wife and I have been talking about going to Italy. I've always wanted to go see the Roman Colosseum. I'm a Gladiator fan, the movie, and I'm watching this stuff and I see a little video of two little girls on a street fountain in Rome called a Nasoni. And basically it looks like a fire hydrant with a little pipe that hangs down the side. Now, back in 1874, the Roman mayor decided to make water more equitable for the Roman people by flowing water, clean, fresh water from the Apennine Mountains through the Roman aqueducts and up to the streets of Rome, out through a little tube called a Nasoni. And again, when you plug the bottom, water popped out the top like a water fountain. Again, this is 1874. This is the time frame the TV show Gunsmoke was on, right?
Yeah, right.
So, I saw that and I'm like, why isn't that in the bathroom? It's such a simple idea. Just shut off the downward flow and it automatically converts the water to an upward stream. So
Yeah.
I went to Lowe's. I bought a fiberglass sink. I bought a faucet and I plugged it in, hooked it up to a garden hose. I drilled a hole in the top, put a shutoff valve in, and sure enough, water popped out the top just like I had hoped. And I made a video of that. And I took it to my stepfather. Now, my stepfather was 83 years old at the time. And he was big in my life, literally and figuratively. 6'3", I'm 5'8" on a good day. Yeah. And I always looked up to him and I said, hey, check this out, right? It's really cool, right? And he looks at it and he goes, what the heck are you going to do with that? And I said, well, when you got to rinse after you brush, you either got to tilt your head, cup your hand, or use a cup, right? He looks at me straight faced and says, no. I said, no. Now remember, he's 83. I said, what do you do? He goes, oh, I just take my teeth out and put them in a cup.
Yeah.
So, but that was the genesis of Nasoni, okay? That led me down the path of being an entrepreneur. as a career. And, there is no roadmap that I could find back then on how to go from idea to product selling. And you learn lessons along the way. You have high points, low points, and failures. And one of the things I really want to point out to anybody that wants to go down this path is make sure it's something you're really passionate about, because you're going to encounter pitfalls. You watch Shark Tank and it looks like you're at this starting point and you're going to hit the finish line and it's a straight line, but it's not. There's many ups and downs. And when you hit those low points, if you're not passionate enough, you'll quit, right? So for me, because of my shipbuilding background, in my TEDx talk, I liken the low points to krakens attacking
Well,
the.
now, Steve, let's talk about your TED Talk. Let me roll you back a little bit, but that the TED Talk is start with who, not why. So you're actually going in the face of one of the gods of the TED Talk world, with that. So go ahead and explain it to us. How
Yeah,
dare you
sure.
go?
Simon Sinek, of course, you're right. He is one of the long-term, most watched TED Talks, top 10 easily, right? 69 million views, I think it is. And his belief is, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right?
Yeah,
And he likens it to Apple and things like that. And that may work for established companies. But for entrepreneurs, people don't care about your why. People care about their pain, right? And for you to solve, they don't care about a vitamin, right? You don't want to go a vitamin as a product. You need a painkiller. And that's because you have a sense of urgency to buy the product to solve the pain, right?
yeah,
And so to do that, you got to understand your who. Who is your customer? And you got to talk to them over and over again as you go through the product development cycle, as you build your proof of concept, as you build your prototype, as you build your MVP, as you go to market. And then you're talking to them at every step along the way. So you have to understand your who. And I'll give you the perfect example. So Jamie Siminoff, do you know who he is? You remember him?
I don't know Jamie Seminoff. No.
So he founded Ring Doorbell. We all know Ring
Oh,
Doorbell.
okay. I do know Ring Doorbell.
So
Yes.
he's kind of my favorite Shark Tank guest of all time. And I'll tell you why. He went on Shark Tank, pitched his Ring Doorbell, and it was the idea he had was he wanted to see when he's in the garage who's at the front door. Simple problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was kind of his why, if you will. And the Sharks didn't see the vision, and he launched the product anyway. Long story short, sold to Amazon for $1 billion, and went
And there
back
you go.
on Shark Tank as a guest shark. Right?
Yeah. That's
Well,
really funny.
the longer story. Now, I bought a Ring Doorbell Pro this past November. We have ADT security. My wife likes it. I'm not a fan. Their
Um,
camera for the front door I don't like. But I wanted to see what the fuss was about with Ring Doorbell. And sure enough, it works fantastic. I
yeah.
installed it probably, I don't know, a month ago. And even though I bought it Black Friday, and I didn't know what I was missing because I got a great view now down the driveway. Not only that, I get notified when anybody's in the driveway. Plus, when everybody comes to the front door, I can hit the microphone button and I can talk to them, whether I'm at work or I'm at home or whatever. Now,
Yeah.
you know, if you ever watch Funniest Home Videos, you see videos that are shot and you think, man, they must have staged that. That's got to be fake. But with
Yeah.
Ring Doorbell, you get those videos all the time. And so now you see what happens at your front door and it's recorded, right? And so now what's happened is police now use this, right? And it makes neighborhoods safer. And he's building a whole safety thing. So his why has become safety, right? It didn't
Yeah.
start out that way. It started out with solving a pain and
Yeah.
who. So as the entrepreneur, he needed to understand his who, not a why. He never, let's put it this way. If his why was to make neighborhoods safer, he never would have discovered a Ring doorbell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I could agree with you on that. Yeah.
So that's why Simon Sinek's why does not apply for entrepreneurs. It start with who. Fair
That's good.
enough.
Yeah. Yep. And I think it's always great to have a controversy. So that's wonderful.
So now
So,
my TEDx talk, by the way, has surpassed 1 million views since its November debut.
congratulations. That's very, very good.
Well, going back to the story, right? In the TEDx talk, I liken the pitfalls of entrepreneurship to krakens in my case. And the
Yes.
first kraken we encountered was we filed a patent too soon, right? You first thing an entrepreneur thinks when you have an idea is I got to protect it because somebody's out to steal it, right?
Right.
Which is not really the case.
Yeah.
But, so the first thing I did was, I went and found a patent attorney in India because I couldn't afford one in America. They were just too expensive. And I was using Elance at the time, which now has become Upwork. It's a freelance
Uh-huh.
site. And I found a patent attorney in India that worked with the U.S. Patent Office. We got 2 patents, a design and a utility patent filed. And then, of course, I went through the design evolution and we got into prototyping, talking to customers, all that, the design changed. And we got into design for manufacture and it changed again.
Yeah.
Now the patent is no longer valid and I had to refile. So that
Yeah.
cost, was expensive. The second a second Kraken came in the form of the 25% China tariff that hit us in 2018 as the product is being shipped here. Now think about this.
Yeah.
You've gotten
Oh,
an investor and you've invested $200,000 for an order of product, and now you get hit with 25% China tariff. Well, that was $50,000 that got brutally consumed in one gulp, by the Kraken, which was the tariff.
yes.
That
Yeah.
was the entire marketing budget that disappeared overnight. Now, the third
Ouch.
Kraken and the biggest of all was COVID, right? So imagine going around and you're marketing a product that is a fountain faucet, right? It's literally a faucet where you rotate the lever and it becomes a water fountain. And you're trying to market it, but you can't talk to anybody because they all got masks on and they're all worried about toilet paper, not faucets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we're struggling to survive, right? And there's an old saying, bet on the jockey, investors bet on the jockey, not the horse. So I'm trying to be that jockey. So I pull money out of my 401k, $50,000 a pop to keep the company alive. And my wife said, Steve, you ought to think about a grant. I'm like, what am I going to do with a grant and a fountain faucet? But fortunately, it's all about networking too, right? So Dr. Dr. Nancy Gurdon introduced me to Dr. Lisa Caperna. Lisa's a clinical director at ODU Monarch Physical Therapy. And Lisa said, Steve, if I had a sensor version of this, then we could help spinal cord injured patients live more independently.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, what a great idea. Well, I also figured out that due to my background in risk management, I wrote the risk process for the aircraft carrier program at Newport News Shipbuilding, that phase 1 grants have a 13% win rate. So 87% chance you're not going to get it, right?
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
I went and found the best grant writer I could, and he wanted 10 grand to help me write the patent. Now I needed 10 more grand. Well, fortunately, the PPP loan came out and I got 20K. I said, I'm going to gamble half of it to try to win this phase 1.
Yeah.
We won the phase 1 for $259,000. The phase 1 clinical trials were outstanding. We knocked it out of the park. And long story short, I won a phase 2 for 2.02 million. And I also, at the same time, identified the fact that, in addition to spinal cord injury patients, I thought about my mother-in-law helping my father-in-law as he declined with dementia. And she
Yeah.
was helping him wash his hair in the shower. Well, he slipped and fell, and she tried to catch him, and she fell too. And
Oof.
he hit the toilet, she hit the track, and I thought, why can't we offload shower functions like hair washing to the bathroom sink where it's safer? Well, the
Yeah.
bathroom faucets are too low to get your head under.
Yeah.
So I had the idea we'd raise the faucet height in the bathroom. And I said, now I need a gerontologist, an expert in Alzheimer's and dementia. So I went and found the head gerontologist at all of Hampton Roads, Virginia, and his name is Dr. Amit Okravi. And Dr. Okravi works at Eastern Virginia Medical School. He is also just assigned to a 2-year term on the Alzheimer's Board of Associations, right? For the board. And Dr. Okravi looks at me and goes, Steve, I like you. I like the idea. And he goes, I also have a problem where I have to call my patients every morning and every night to remind them to take their meds. I said, well, let's put that in the grant. So I hired my grant writer again and applied for that grant. We just won 2.59 million last September. So in the last 2.5 years, we've won $5 million and we've transformed the company. We've pivoted from a hardware company to a software development company with machine learning, computer engineering, incredible stuff.
Yeah. Well, you remind me of one of my friends is named Brant Cooper, and he wrote The Lean Entrepreneur. And one of his big points was that you've got to go out and like talk to your customer, know who, right? And he tells the story about this. Um, this hackathon they were doing over a weekend, and these guys came in. It was a medical device hackathon, and they came in with this medical device they were sure was just going to be a big hit among cardiac surgeons. And he was like, okay, great. Well, have you talked to any? And they're like, well, no. And he said, well, go talk to some. Right. And they're like, well, what do you mean? It's the weekend. And he said, well, go to the emergency room. So he threw them out, pushed them out the door, and they went to the emergency room, came back, much, much later in the day. And they said, oh, you know what? Our client is actually going to be emergency room nurses,
Wow.
which dramatically changes how
Yeah.
you talk about it, who you market it to, all that kind of
But
stuff,
that's your
right?
who, right? That's your who.
Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing in the back of my mind as you're saying this. And I think it's absolutely right. You've got to know your customer.
Yeah. So it starts with your who as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Right? And I want to
Yeah.
differentiate that, right? Your who is with your entrepreneur. But and Simon can be right for companies, established companies. There's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think they're both are valid. We
Yes.
can we can
Agreed.
use both. We were talking before we got on, and one of the things that I keep thinking as you're talking about the progress of this whole thing is, and I think you and I would agree at this point, like I can remember when I was young and, you know, didn't quite know what was going on, saying, oh yeah, well, I if I told you, I'd have to kill you, right? My idea is so good. Right. And now I'm like old, cynical old man here. And I'm like, sorry, man, like it's all about the implementation, like the idea, whatever, you know, tell me about that value creation cycle that you talk about in the book Valuepreneurs.
Yeah. So it's an interesting story. What you just said was integration is where it's at, right? I mean, implementation, right? Go making it happen,
Yeah,
right? And the title of the book was different before that, right? And it was all about execution. Was in the title. And I was talking to Jason Pfeiffer. Do you know who Jason is?
i don't I
Jason,
don't, but
Jason is the editor of Entrepreneur magazine.
oh, okay, then
So
I
he's
know of
up
him.
there, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom call with him the year before I published the book while I was writing it. And I told him the title, and he goes, "I think you need a different title. Everybody knows execution's where it's at these days." And
Yeah.
so, what the heck am I going to call the book? I was racking my brain. I went in Chat GPT. I entered 100 different titles, and nothing was working. No ideas. And so I was at the Outer Banks one day. My wife and I like to vacation at the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and we're living
Nice.
as a couple, and we're watching a movie in a movie theater room at this rental cottage on the ocean, and I can't get the title out of my mind. And I thought, what's different about my process than any other? And so as I thought about it, I'm going to show you the process. This is what I showed Jason. So the process is all about starting with an idea. And at the beginning, you can see ideas are, they say, a dime a dozen because they're all full of risk. You've
Yeah.
added nothing to add value. And it's not until you go through all the steps of the process until you get to product market fit where your product's selling on Amazon while you're sleeping that you've added all the value, right?
Yeah.
And so as I thought about this, I thought, you know what? It's all about adding value. And I also read a marketing book where you could take two words, put them together and form a new word. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, value and entrepreneur became valuepreneurs. And that
Valuepreneurs.
I've since trademarked the title.
Yeah, that's good.
But you'll also notice, like for example, when you go through the process and you're doing customer validation and then you file a provisional patent. Now this is a provisional, not a utility or design. This gives you a 1 year runway to finish out what you're doing. But you file
Yeah.
the provisional patent and then you make a decision. You make a maker license decision. The reason you do that is, do you have the skills to continue designing and building and selling and marketing this product? Or is it better done by somebody else?
Yeah.
Right. And so if it is better done by somebody else, then you're going to license it. And there's a great book on it called One Simple Idea. And Stephen Key, that's his
Uh-huh.
book. And so he can teach you about how to license it. But if you got the skills, then you keep going. And you don't patent trademark it and brand it and patent it until you get over here.
Yeah.
The patents are done over here. But back in my early stage of Nasoni, I patented as soon as I had the idea and how I was going to initially engineer it. Right. So
Yeah.
I was way too soon.
Well, it's a great journey, and I think that you learned a lot of lessons. And And I also think that that engineering background and you know building aircraft carriers and stuff, that's a pretty good basis. What's another thing that you would say you took out of that experience that helped you on this entrepreneurial journey of yours?
There's just a big one in value of networking, right? Because I think Dan Sullivan had a great book, right? Who, not how.
Yeah.
You don't always have to know the solution if you know who that can do this, right?
Yes.
And so I've used that a lot, especially with even just freelancers. I've leveraged my freelancer network a ton. Tools like, as I mentioned, Upwork and
Yeah. Upwork.
and what's the other? Fiverr. Man, I have got some great people on both of those sites. Um,
Yeah.
and when I wrote the book, as I mentioned to you before, it's in full color. And I initially had the graphics done by some different graphics people, but then I went back through and I found a graphics person in India and redid all the graphics so all of them are consistent all the way through
Yeah.
and match. And
That's good. Yeah.
you know, so it's the whole thing about networking though, and who, not how, and finding the right people that know how. Again, I have written multi-million-dollar government proposals. I've won them with my wife's company. But a grant is totally a different beast. And
Yeah.
understanding how to do that process and win that, you need an expert. And so in the who, not how world, I went and found the expert as a prime example.
Right. And yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know
and I,
how many people can say they've won 3 in a row. We're batting 1,000 on grants. And
yeah. So
by
that's
the way,
good.
grants right now, you have a phase one and a phase two. Typically, phase one's around 250,000. Phase two could be a couple million. And then usually it's up to the entrepreneur to go commercialize beyond that. But what's
Uh huh.
happened is the government has recognized there's what they call a valley of death.
Yeah.
They cannot commercialize it. They're not good at raising funds or whatever. And so they implemented what they call a CRP grant. Most people don't know they exist, but it stands for Commercialization Readiness Pilot. And so we submitted a $4 million CRP grant back in December, which we hope to hear about this summer to give us the funds to go beyond phase two without having to go raise venture capital.
Yeah. Wow. That's fabulous. That would be really great. And I also, I mean, I love how this went from being, I want to be able to rinse my mouth after I brush my teeth to being something that's now really picking up lots and lots of steam, if I understand it correctly, in the world of, you know, people with disabilities, people with dementia, that kind of thing.
Well, let me share with you a little bit some examples of what we're doing, right? So you go into a commercial bathroom and you probably have used a regular sensor to turn a faucet on, turn it off. That's a dumb
Mm,
sensor, if you will. I invented a whole new way to do that, which I call smart motion control. And by that, I mean, I told my engineering team, I said, look, the closer you get to the sun, the hotter it gets, the further away, the colder. I want to control temperature by distance. And we've done that. Nobody's
that's
ever done
cool.
it. A big faucet company. No, none of them have done it. We've done it.
Yeah.
Um, we're doing things like voice cloning. So, for example, with Alzheimer's and dementia, people can be startled by the voice of let's call it a disembodied voice. And so we're doing things like cloning the voice of a loved one. We're
Okay.
doing some incredible things with this, and I can't get into too much of it because it'll go into pre-patent things we're working on right now.
Sure.
But just know that I mean, from what you've just heard, the stuff we're doing is revolutionary. We're on the cutting edge of machine learning and computer engineering, computer vision, and the technology is moving at a rapid pace with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And so, I'm taking the mode of like Wayne Gretzky, right? Skate where the puck's going, not where
Gonna
it's,
be.
you know.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's what we're doing.
Well, that's fabulous. So, and we can find your book, just so I don't forget to say it. We can find that at Amazon and at
Yeah.
other bookstores.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's in all four modes, right? So you can get there's a PDF Kindle version rather. There's the audio version if you like audiobooks, which I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of Zig Ziglar. Zig calls it
Yeah,
audio
yeah,
university, right?
yeah,
And then the paperback is 19.99, so that's the cheaper version. It's black and white. But if you want the full color experience, the hardcover is the way to go. And so,
yeah.
paperback, hardcover, Kindle, and audiobook.
Well, I know that there's a story you have about how you were going to write a business book a while back, and they told you, "Oh no, we don't do, business books aren't in color." But you at the time, you were measuring risk and indicating risk by color, and color was an important thing to you, so you just didn't do it. Now you've got the most awarded entrepreneurial book ever, and it's in color. So,
Well, let me ask you this, right? Put yourself in my shoes, right? You're starting a new system engineering department. We started up the department at the shipyard. And so at the time,
uh-huh.
the manager came to me and he says, they want to come up with a risk process for the aircraft carrier program. I want you to develop it. And so in my mind, I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I said to myself, let's go out and figure out who's done it well, put it all together and do something better, right? So what would be similar in your mind to building a nuclear powered aircraft carrier?
I mean, like, was NASA already doing stuff?
Well, that's a great point. So when I asked somebody else this question, they said, "How about building the Empire State Building?" And I said, "Well, its height is about as long as a carrier is, long, right? Tall as a carrier is long, but it doesn't have two nuclear reactors, enough desalination capability to provide water for 2,000 homes, things like that." So what came to my mind was the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle in terms of complexity,
There
right?
you go. Yeah.
So I reached out to Dr. Pete Rutledge at NASA headquarters, and he gave me the contacts for both of those programs' risk plans. I reached out to both of them, and he also said they're doing risk training out at NASA Langley. And so I called them up. They invited me out to be a guest for 2 weeks out there for their training. And what they were doing by the time I had written the process was similar to what I had written in my process. And so I said, "Hey, can you guys do some joint training with me?" They thought about it and they said, "You know what? We'll get technology transfer credit. So yeah, we'll do that." So the shipyard was blown away because here I came back with NASA personnel.
Yeah.
We got this
Yeah.
process going, and man, it was like really ranked really high in what we did. In fact, I was leading a conference for the International Council on System Engineering, and I had Defense System Management College down from Fort Belvoir. They took a look at the process and they said, "Steve, this is like the best we've seen. We would like to make it the industry best practice at Fort Belvoir." And they did. But the
That's
point was,
cool.
J. Ross Publishing came to me to write a book on risk management after all of that. And I wanted to do it because it was like a bucket list goal of mine to be published author, right?
Yeah.
And when they started getting into the weeds of the process, and I was explaining how I was going to do it, and the color graphics involving stoplight charts with red, yellow, green indicators, monthly reports with visual indicators of color, and they got back and said, business books aren't published in color. I said, "Well, if I'm going to do it, mine is." And so I backed out of the contract. And so when the time came to publish this book, I said it's going to be done in color. And by the way, do you know who Chris Hively is?
You're nope. But you're going to tell me, and I'll probably realize that I do. But
Well, you remember MapQuest, right?
yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Chris is the co-founder of MapQuest, which he sold for over $1 billion.
Yeah.
He wrote the foreword for the book.
Wow. That's fabulous.
And then the next thing is being a self-published author. I came up with my own self-publishing company name, and my wife had used the name Rosenthor in an online game, and it sounded something like Game of Thrones to me. Rosenthor, right? It
Yeah.
sounded cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Totally.
I called the book Rosenthor Publishing. And do you know where the name comes from? Rosenthor.
I mean,
My wife and I rescue German Shepherds. And the two we have right now is Rose and Thor. And so now when people buy the book, a portion of the proceeds go to Southeast German Shepherd Rescue.
wow. That's great. Okay. That's really good to know. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool story.
For Rose and Thor,
Yeah.
they're the ones who kicked it off.
The other thing we do at Nasoni is we bring on interns. So we had 2 interns from Old Dominion University over the last 2 years, Michael Nixon and Kylie Donalds. And Michael graduated in December, and he just joined us full time as soon as he graduated as a smart product development engineer. We have another intern now from William and Mary. So we try to find ways to give back, either whether it's through Rosenthor Publishing or through hiring interns, giving them career opportunities and things like that.
Yeah. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Well, so people can they can connect with you at linkedin.com/in/Steve Waddell, SteveWaddell. And so they can find out more about everything you're doing there. Is there any place else online, or is that a great place to go for you?
You can go to swaddell.com too. That's just an overview, kind of like an online resume for me. Uh,
Okay, cool.
and there's also nasoni.com for
Uh-huh.
the faucet company, and then valuepreneurs.com. I own that domain as well.
Great. Okay, good. Well, we'll put all of those in I'm just making a note here. We'll put all of those in the show notes and make sure that people can get to those links. And, I know that we've got maybe 5 minutes left or so before we got to go, but I want to make sure, is there anything that I didn't ask you or that you wanted to talk about or anything before we wrap up?
Well, I think the biggest point I'd like to make is that what we're doing with the faucets, if you think about it, in just 5 years, all the baby boomers will be over the age of 65. And so that's the biggest population, in our history, right, in the country.
Yeah.
And my father started. He's a 83-year-old Army vet, and he started falling at home. Okay, and there's probably a lot of people listening that may be in this similar scenario.
Yeah.
I did not know dehydration is the number one cause of falls in seniors. Number one cause.
Wow.
It's a number
Wow.
one also cause of preventable hospitalizations. And so when I realized, when looking back, right, he drank Coke in the morning and coffee in the afternoon. Excuse me, backwards. Coffee in the morning and Coke in the afternoon, sometimes with Jack. But he never drank water. So I know he was dehydrated. Okay. And
Yeah.
the concerns you have when he lives 25 minutes away is, did he fall? Is he okay?
Yeah.
Is this the fall that's going to put him in assisted living? Well,
Yeah.
eventually it did. And it was $7,000 a month for him to live in assisted living.
Ouch.
And so when you think about falls in the home, where do you think most falls occur in the home?
I mean, I would assume the bathroom.
80% occur in the bathroom. Okay. Now
Slippery.
think about wearables, right? Life alert, help, I'm falling, I can't get up, right?
Yeah.
Or the ring or the watch. What happens
Uh,
to wearables when you get a shower?
yeah. You take most of them off, right?
And on top of that, my dad wouldn't wear any of that. He wouldn't wear the
Yeah.
necklace. He wouldn't wear these. So there needs to be a passive fall detection solution in the bathroom, and we are inventing that right now.
Wow, that's cool. And I got to imagine that it having the fountain the on the faucet helps with that dehydration issue.
It absolutely does. So we actually have hydration reminders. So when you walk in the morning, where's the first place you go when you get up? The bathroom. Where's the last
Yeah.
place you go before you go to bed? The bathroom. We
Yeah.
are making the bathroom the center for health and wellness in the home. That's one of our primary objectives. So,
Yeah.
the bathroom in essence needs a Ring doorbell moment, and we are bringing that to the table. That's what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
There's no better analogy for the advancements we've made in the faucet. If you could see what we're doing, you'd be blown away.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I mean, and I think most of the people who listen to this know that I've got a mom in a memory care unit. And, I like all of a sudden that whole thing of everybody's getting to that stage and there's that huge demographic
My
is
mom
getting
is
to that stage.
My mother-in-law is 89, and my mom just fell last week. And
Yeah.
it happens. And I'm now making sure she's hydrated because she's not been drinking enough water. And I know this now, and I'm trying to help her in advance. Where I couldn't with my father because I didn't know. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what an inspiring, cool entrepreneurial journey of like taking an idea that's a dime a dozen and just turning it into something with great value.
I got to tell you, John, I come to work every day. I love what I do. It's not work. And the
Yeah.
other thing I'll tell you, the other thing we're doing for fun, you can see behind me EOS. Do you see the
Yeah.
manual? We're,
Yes. Yeah.
we're, we're implementing the entrepreneurial operating system this quarter in my company.
I
But
think that's boom pow. Yeah.
yeah, So it's really been fun journey with that. We've got an implementer we're working with, Clay Harris, out of North Carolina, great guy, and
Cool.
we're already seeing benefits from doing this, and I'm excited about where the journey's taken us.
Well, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. Well, so I want to respect your time and get us out of here when I said I would. I really, really appreciate you joining me. I'm really, excited to have the guy who wrote the most awarded entrepreneurial book in history on the show. And I encourage people to go grab your book. I think that it's it's a thing that I think not all early entrepreneurs understand, right? I know I didn't. So I mean, at the very least, I didn't understand it. And so, that whole thing of loving what you do and just building value in and understanding that it's, the idea is important, yes, but the idea is just the beginning. Like that's the starting line, not the finish line,
Yeah.
right?
John, I'm always honored to be here and talk with you. It's always fun catching up, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us today on speaklikealeader.show. If you enjoy the show, please tell your friends. Please give us a 5-star rating. That helps increase our visibility. And most of all, thanks for joining us. And thank you for what you bring to the world. I hope that what we do here supports you in doing that a little better and having a little more fun while you do it. Thanks again, Steve.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.